Jim, let's start with you. Put on your political pundit hat for me and just try to make sense of the last 24 hours in terms of what the president did, what we're hearing from Pelosi, and where it gets us.
Well, I think the president believes that he is engaging in, premier art of the deal making, walking away from the table in a sort of a dramatic flourish, and that will then force Pelosi to come back to the table. That's sort of been his history. And in fact, he's talked about that as the way to get really hard concessions from an opponent. I'm not sure that's the right situation, because I think in Nancy Pelosi, you have someone who doesn't feel greatly compelled to get a deal right now. Donald Trump's down by a lot. Why should she make a deal? Now, that said, I don't sort of get on a policy basis why, and maybe Austin can tell me, why Nancy Pelosi doesn't make a deal. 1.6 trillion, that's about 75% of 2.2 trillion. That seems pretty good. There's a ton of aid in the Mnuchin plan for state and local governments. That seems like a deal she should take, though perhaps she doesn't want those $1,200 checks going to Americans with Donald Trump's name on them.
Yeah, well, Austin, Jimmy asked the question, but I'll say it as well. I mean, why not, take something that's at least halfway there with the prospect of shoring it up next year, particularly if you have Biden in the White House?
Well, look, I wasn't in the room where they were doing the negotiations. My understanding is that Secretary Mnuchin and Speaker Pelosi were in the midst of negotiating what could be a compromise deal when the president weighs in with a statement saying we're going to be done with this. And I think the one thing to add that made, I thought, the statement a little more sinister sounding was the president saying, you can have your money when I'm reelected. I think it was more than partly a veiled threat that he's saying he has a long history of trying to get revenge on the people that he perceived as his enemies. And I think this was a statement that if people are not going to vote for me, then I'm going to let the thing burn itself to the ground. And so I think Nancy Pelosi and Steven Mnuchin might have been able to reach a deal. It did seem to me that if you look at the particulars, they were getting close. There was certainly common ground to be had. And I guess I don't understand why the president would just go blow it up like that.
Jimmy, help me understand, if there is no deal before the election, under any election scenario, blue wave, Donald Trump, you name it, is it likely that there could be any stimulus pass after the election till year end? And I ask this question sort of tongue in cheek because, temporary furloughs are becoming permanent layoffs as we speak. Americans don't have enough money to pay for food, to pay for rent as we speak. I mean, the urgency is right now. It's not in January or February when a new Congress is sworn in.
Well, listen, I think certainly in a sane world, that would for sure happen. A sane world, we'd be doing it right now. So maybe that could happen. I'm not sure, as I've been looking at what Wall Street's been saying this morning, I'm not sure they have an expectation that you'll suddenly get this, everyone's going to come together and you're going to get this big deal in any kind of lame duck period. What might force that, of course, are markets. If markets really start tanking, I think in the past we've seen how that can force Congress to act. More bad economic numbers, that could force Congress to act. But I would not bet a lot of money based on what we've seen so far and the inability already to get a deal when there's obvious need for a deal to happen. And there's pretty good deals right there waiting to be grabbed that if one doesn't happen now, that it's going to happen, 90 days from now.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.